You're listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Now, it is time to break it down.
Welcome to episode number 22 of the Sonny Brown Breakdown. I'm your host, Sonny Brown, and in this episode, I talk to Lachlan Giles. Now, of course, Lachlan took out bronze at the ADCC Absolute Division last year, 2019, and we talk about how his persistence in competition for many years prior to that kind of led up to it culminating in that day, and also how he prepared specifically for that competition by narrowing his focus, which leads us into a bit of a discussion about the importance of self-directed learning and class and lesson structure, and even the value of breaking down competition footage to help improve your game. We then move on to a bit of a discussion about a study that he'd done with his club, and also a few ideas about where the game and evolution of no-gi might be heading, and that's really kind of delving into those ideas of learning and competition that, of course, we want to hear from Lachlan. So I hope you guys really enjoy it. If you want to check out a transcript, it'll be up later on at sonnybrown.net, and also while you're there, give me any feedback on this episode and leave us a review on iTunes. I hear they really help. But now, let's go to the podcast. Lachlan, thanks so much for being here today, mate. How are you?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, mate. It's the honor's all mine, trust me. So obviously everyone I think would be familiar with your recent success, bronze medal ADCC, going from strength to strength, really putting Australia on the map. In terms of grappling. I mean, obviously we've had standouts before, but it's kind of seems like a more cohesive unit coming out from Melbourne down there. My first question would be is, coming up in Australia around your time, the idea of, getting to those levels at ADCC and competing on such a, international stage would have seemed out of reach, or at least I would have thought that would have been the common perception, that you got to go to Brazil or you got to go to America and that's where you're going to get your training. It couldn't be done by local guys in Australia. So when did you feel that, it might actually be possible, or that, that you could overcome that? Or was that the perception that you had at one point?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever, I kind of, you have that dream, I guess, of getting on the podium at a world level. But to be honest, I didn't. If you had have asked me at any point, I probably would have said, it's probably unlikely. I'm doing my best to improve, but the chance of that happening is pretty slim. I'd been on overseas training trips before, and I'd sort of seen the level. And as always, in some ways, it could be a positive experience, but also negative. Like sometimes you'd be like, you'd roll with one of the best guys, in the world. You could roll with a world champion when you go on one of those trips. And sometimes you'd be like, I could get like a little bit of my game going for a moment. You'd almost never, I'm trying to think on my head. I don't think there was ever a time I rolled with a current like top world champion and walked away like, yeah, I'd beat them. Like I've never kind of walked away with that that feeling, but you might you get to your position you've been working and maybe off balance them or something. You kind of could come away with some little glimpses that part of what you're doing is heading in the right direction. But at the same time, usually it's quite disheartening, because at those sort of training camps as well, like everyone takes it very seriously, and there'll be people. You could be a black belt, I've had times where I'm a black belt trying to prepare to compete at, a Worlds, which is in like 2 weeks' time, and I'll roll with a brown belt, and I'm like, I don't know if I would win in that match. We'd have a roll, and I'd come away from that going, geez, that was like really tough. So, in some ways, it can be quite disheartening to just see the amount of people with the same goal as you who are putting in, what I would say is a similar amount of effort. And when you think of it like that, it is actually quite difficult. It is. I feel like I'm part of it. I'd say actually a good part of my success in ADCC was just like on the day, like I had my day, and that's kind of what everyone hopes, that you want to be the best in the division, where even on your worst day, you'll still win. But failing that, then you just want to have your day. If you're not at that level, then you want to just have your day. And I think at ADCC, I definitely probably exceeded my dreams of how well I could perform in a particular tournament. So, kind of a mix. I do think along the way, seeing people do well internationally, I think Kit was probably the first. I was a brown belt, he was a purple belt, and he won the World Pro at purple belt. And I was like, geez, that's, because I would train with Kit. Okay, I kind of just started training with him around that time, and I was like, geez, that's a pretty, I knew he was tough from the training with him, and I knew I was brown and he was purple, and he was beating me, but I felt like I was kind of nipping at his heels a little bit, but he would stay ahead. But I was like, okay, well, he's doing well, and that's not too big of an ask for me to do well at the brown belt level. And then that, obviously his success continued. And then we had other people like, my wife Liv, she won blue belt worlds. So that gave me, like, okay, it's doable. If we stick to the right strategy. And then obviously Craig in 2017, having his result. So, I think though I wasn't always looking at like world championship level competition. At first it was like, can I do well in Australia, or even, can I do well in a smaller, the Victorian championships or something. And that kind of like, once you achieve your goal, you tend to look a bit further. You set some new goal, you realign the goalposts and try to make a new goal. So yeah, I never really with confidence said like, yes, I'm now like at a level where I'm going to be a world champion, which I'm still not, but yeah.
But I mean, you say you were, you had a good day at ADCC. Obviously that's correct. It would have been a good day. But I mean, you have had a few good days in recent memory as well. That's probably not the only one. I mean, your performance at, you've had a couple of good days, right? Yeah.
So I suppose that's, I mean, along the last 5 years, like I'd had some wins over some people who had done, like my first probably big win was against, I beat Hani Yahya, and then, no, actually, sorry, it was Edwin Najmi. Edwin Najmi was probably my first big win. Mm-hmm. That was in Australia at 꽀ᴏ Super 8. And then that same year, I think he came second at Worlds, that next Worlds that came around. I was like, okay, like, that's the thing. It can be like a one-off thing compared to to win the Worlds, you got to be consistently winning those sort of matches, which I kind of felt like I fumbled my way through that match and just got through. So, but yeah, like, there was a few of them along the way. And then in 2019, I felt like I had a very, very, like in the lead up to ADCC, I think I hadn't lost yet that year. I hadn't been competing like, every weekend or anything. Like I'd kind of pick and choose my tournaments I was going in, but I was feeling very confident in my style and what I wanted to do. So there's definitely a bit of momentum, and it was probably the most confident I'd felt about a tournament at an international stage before.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a good one to be feeling confident about. That's for sure.
Yeah, I certainly, as I said, I mean, confident, but not to a silly degree. I think I tried to be realistic. Like I still didn't think my chance, I didn't think like, I'm going to win ADCC, but I thought I had a chance, everything.
Best effort.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, I mean, as you're building on those, those victories, as you said, from Victorian, just growing and growing, setting the incremental goals. What did you think was the change that you needed to make, or that you did make, that kind of enabled you to go to those next levels that, other people weren't at that stage really seeing through with that much consistency?
You mean like in the for like 2019 compared to before that, or yeah? I feel like I had I'm probably my biggest strength is my consistency. I'd say that's actually I've been training for 17 years now, maybe even longer. I could probably I probably don't count that correctly, but so I the last 10 years you could probably count on your hand the amount of times I'd had more than a week off. It's usually like every day of the week showing up training. And I probably don't train more than most, like a lot of the top athletes you hear of training, like, 4 or 5 hours a day. I definitely don't even do half of that usually, but I am there every day, and I'm thinking and trying to work through that. So, I I think that was a big thing. At some point, I made the decision to focus on ADCC. You know, to be honest, that was probably even before the 2017 ADCC. I said, okay, like this is what I want to try to do well at. It's pretty hard to try to go well at ADCC and IBJJF. No, in the gi, they're kind of almost separate. The way you got to train for them and the skill sets you got to develop. So I said, okay, I'm going to focus on the ADCC thing, and I put all my effort into that. And then there was probably a year, 2 years of continual growth, and that 2019 was probably where it sort of really started to show. So I kind of narrowed my focus. I think narrowing my focus helped a lot. Yeah.
Okay. I like the sounds of that, especially I remember you saying for your ADCC prep, you really just focused on leg locks and wrestling, and I made sure to send that quote to all the guys I coach wrestling to be like, see guys?
Yeah.
Let's
wrestling.
Go. Takedowns matter.
Yeah, it's, well, to be honest, I do love training for ADCC because you have to be good everywhere. I do feel like in my division in IBJJF, you can almost forget about the stand-up thing. Like you can just pull guard and you just imagine that wrestling doesn't exist. Whereas in ADCC, you can't ignore it. You have to develop that skill set because if it goes to overtime, if you don't know it, you're going to lose. So, it kind of forces you to do that. And I enjoy the training. It makes you feel like you're a bit more of a complete athlete. So you have to know how to pass, how to play guard, how to wrestle. You have to know leg locks, back takes, finishes. You kind of includes everything. That's one of the reasons I like it.
That's nice, beautiful. I mean, nothing wrong with being have a complete game in jiu-jitsu. Nothing wrong with that. And so, to when you're building up and focusing, narrowing your focus from there. I think before you'd mentioned that you saw the value in tape study and that doing tape analysis was a key moment for you when you started to do that. And I'm a big fan of that myself, obviously, and just wanted to get inside your thought process of what role that played and how you went about doing it.
Yeah, so it's been huge. So I think I've made a few posts on Instagram or Facebook recently, kind of about things that have influenced my development along the time. And I remember seeing Dan Lukart posted, he had this kind of Hodja Gracie breakdown that he had online on YouTube, where he'd kind of talk through the techniques and then he'd show a clip of Hodja using it. It showed that he'd got the inspiration for teaching that technique by watching Hodja and kind of breaking down what he was doing. And he kind of went through most of Hodja's game plan. So it was Trumpet, he called himself Trumpet Dan or Dan Lukart.
Yep.
And actually, another guy I was working with at the time, training with Dan Shaw, who he was someone who was watching international competition. And at the time, I was just I'd maybe watch the occasional MMA fight, but most of my jiu-jitsu was just based off whatever I'd see in the gym or what I'd seen on UFC or something. I'd try to just do that move. I think I spent a long time after watching Kazushi Sakuraba, like giving my back to try to Kimura people because he was my favorite MMA fighter. Once I kind of caught on to the fact that you could watch international tape and see all these moves that I wasn't being exposed to at all at home, that was huge for me because then I was like, okay, look at what they're doing. And then I'd try it in the gym. And obviously, first you suck at it, but also when you suck at it, but no one knows what you're even doing, then it can still work and that can build confidence really well. So I was finding like a lot of the things that, it wouldn't take much practice before I could start hitting it a lot against my training partners. And then you're kind of ahead of there's an arms race where they start trying to develop counters, but you're kind of ahead of the arms race because you're watching the tape and seeing how the top guys are countering it. So I kind of followed that a lot. And that's when I started playing, what I'd say is a more international style, like the Marcelo Garcia style and the Mendes brothers and countless other influences on depending what technique I was working. So that was a huge factor in my development. And even now, like, I'm watching, I'm trying to work my wrestling. I'm studying a lot of tape of elite wrestling at the moment with my free time. So that's good.
Hey, plenty of free time at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of breakdowns, obviously, myself. And for me, it was like all the other sports like NFL, you know that they go through tape after a game and just break it down. Basketball, soccer, they all do it. But I have had some people suggest to me that like, jiu-jitsu, you gotta feel it. You can't see what they're doing. You have to actually go to someone and feel what they're doing. And that's the only way to actually learn at tape value, studying tapes of limited use. What would you say to something like that?
I mean, it's funny because if you look at any of those sports, soccer, football, rugby, all that, I feel like the technical portion is like far less relevant than it is in I feel like athleticism is a much bigger factor in those sports than it is in jiu-jitsu. So, or in grappling. So you're actually going to get more out of tape analysis in a grappling sense than you would in I can't even pick. I used to play Australian rules football, and I'm trying to picture how someone showing me a video of watching Australian rules football would really help me that much. Like you could kind of get an idea like, oh, okay, they turn left or right, but it's like, they shrug a tackle like this, but compared to the technical nuance you can pick up from studying a jiu-jitsu tape, it's just like nothing. So if they're finding it's working, if they're finding it valuable enough for those sports, then it surely should be valuable for jiu-jitsu. Now I agree that sometimes you don't need to feel it, but sometimes you won't see what's going, like you won't be able to visualize or get a true sense of what that move feels like unless you have that person do it to you. But that's not to say you can't, sometimes if you've got a very keen eye for detail, you can still pick up those things, or maybe you won't. Maybe, you get the general idea of the movement, and then that helps you pick up when let's say I'm studying Leandro Lo, and I'm trying to copy every move he does. And I just I can't get his, I can't do his knee cut. And then you get a chance to roll with him and he does it to you. And you're like, oh, you kind of go like, oh, I could really feel this. You try to do the things that people did to you. That was when you tried his game, you try to do them on him to frustrate him. And you're like, oh, well, it didn't work and you can feel then you can actually have enough of a reference point to make the adaptation to learn his game better. Whereas if you never played his game and then he did it, you'd just be like, oh, he just beat me. I don't know why, So I think it's really important in grappling to know why, really pay attention to why things are or are not working. What's the key detail that you were missing or that happens so that, you go for your sweep and it doesn't work. Like why? What grip are they doing that annoys you that no one else is doing that when you do sweep them? Because once you recognize that, you can start to strategize around it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So it's like obviously it would be better if you could, feel the moves that all the top guys are doing and that you want to study, but realistically you're going to be able to get value from that tape study no matter what, right?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's and I think it's not just when we say tape study, you're not just watching people roll and trying to see who wins. It's not an entertainment thing. You're trying to put yourself in their shoes and go like, what would I do here? Like if I was in that position, how would I be reacting? And then why are they taking that grip? Because I would do something different, and then you can start, once you realize what's different to what you would normally do, that's something you can then start trying to implement, I think.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned then that the importance of troubleshooting, and I would imagine that when you're coaching and trying to put that mindset onto the people you're coaching, the importance of being able to individually troubleshoot whatever they're having problems with. Is that something that you think you can teach people to be able to do?
Yeah, I'm trying to be honest. I haven't I'm trying to get better at making people self-directed learners. Which is not an easy, teaching people how to learn as opposed to teaching them the moves is something I'm more recently started trying to put a bit more focus on. So I think you can do that. it's always hard with class times, but, I have occasionally, well, not recently because of Corona, but pre-Corona, we'd sometimes finish a round or a specific training round, and then we'll be, okay, now just you explain to your partner something they were doing that was frustrating to you, and then they do the same for you, just to get them to like have a little discussion about what was frustrating and potentially how they could solve that problem as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is that's like a contrived way to get people to do it. But I think some people naturally do it, and they're usually the ones that improve pretty quick. You see people, they go to open mat and they roll, and then you see them sitting there like workshopping things, and they're usually the people that are going to improve quite fast.
That makes sense. People taking on their own responsibility for their learning, being able to self-direct it. I think I've heard you mention that you'll even have classes where people will just, be given the freedom to work on whatever it is they want to work on, and not so much in an open mat fashion, but you'll help them out just whatever they want to work on. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So for our, So I mean, self-directed learning is something that's come up as in the research on. I guess on how fast people learn quite a bit. So if you let people kind of self-directed, they're going to pick up things quicker as long as it's as long as they're following like the right path, I guess. So with our pro sessions and with our advanced sessions, our pro sessions are actually all you work on whatever you want. I barely give any set thing like, okay, we're working from a double leg or single leg or whatever, or from knee through pass. It'll almost always be all right, whatever you want to start from, like it's your 5 minutes, you go from there, that's what you're working on, and then your partner gets 5 minutes starting from their position. It's that does force people to go home and come into the class with a plan, or at least if they want to get more out of the class, they're going to come in like, okay, I'm working on this, this, and this. And they get to kind of get a lot of reps in on that area. So that's one thing we do. And in our advanced classes, I would teach a technique in the advanced class, but when it's time to drill, if you've got something that you want to work on, then feel free to do that. I don't really make them do the technique that I'm teaching.
Okay, that's interesting. So you show a technique if people, maybe want inspiration or an idea, but if they want to do their own drilling, they're free to. You're not going to go over there and whack them over the head with a kendo stick and tell them to get back on track. So with your drilling, is there anything that you do different or that makes what you're doing unique? I mean, obviously your friend Kit Dale was probably at least vocally saying that he wasn't drilling or something along those lines. But what is it that, you can do to improve on people's drilling that you think?
Yeah, it's, it depends on the level the person has, and it's very dependent on how confident you are in the technique you're doing. So if it's a new movement, if you don't feel confident with your movement, then I think you just want to get some reps in of the movement. I think at a certain point, the timing and the context for when to use the move become more of a factor in your success than the actual ability to execute the move when you need to. So more than the actual technical steps. So that's where I feel like it has to shift from a drills to specific training. Like let's say you want to drill finishing your arm bar, like, okay, you go to a static opponent and you're just extending their arm 50 times. That's at a certain point, okay, you know how to extend their arm and finish an arm bar. That's going to have diminishing returns quite quickly. But then having someone trying to fight out of the armbar at various stages, will give you a much better feel for the context of as to when you should push the arm which way and so on. So there's that. And then I feel like there's some in between level of that, which is, I like the way wrestlers drill, and I found I can do it well in wrestling, but I can't do it well in jiu-jitsu, which is, I don't know why. I just haven't found a way to be able to do this. You need a good drilling partner, I think. But in wrestling, you kind of, you shoot and they'll defend, and you kind of like transition, and you keep, your opponent will kind of make you go through 3 or 4 transitions. They're going to let you take them down. So they're not trying to completely stop you, but they'll stop some of your attacks so that you have to kind of work the timing and the context of when you would change between your moves. And I found that really useful for wrestling. I find people are less good on the ground at giving correct feedback for that, but I think you could do the same sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. That was actually something I was talking to Brian Ebersol about, that he was saying he would do for his is making sure that, when giving that defending a drill, is making sure that it's 5-6 different ways to defend, and then the person gets all those different looks. So I think that's definitely a big portion. So
I think an issue on the ground might be that there's a lot of static positions which you don't really have in wrestling, or at least not as much. So in wrestling, it's usually it's all dynamic, and then you come in and you try to finish. There's very little pause in between. Whereas if you were to say I'm going to drill like that, you're on top and I'm on bottom, and I'm going to try and sweep you. If you block one sweep, my answer might be to come back to a static position and just kind of just settle back to a position that I can just hold for a bit and reset my attacks. But that doesn't make for a very good flow drill. You've kind of blocked my attack and I come back. Whereas in wrestling, it would be like, no, well, you just keep driving until eventually you find something. So I'm still playing around with ways to use that best in a grappling jiu-jitsu sort of format.
Yep. Yeah, I understand. I think, I spoke to, I know you are aware of, Preet Mikkelsen, his work. I actually checked him out on some recommendation. I think you read it.
Yeah.
So, and the conversation I had with him was actually a lot about, switching how we train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to a sport rather than an art as how it's been taught previously, and that wrestling has had that benefit of just being around for a lot longer. And I wonder if that's kind of the thing that you're discussing now, about just trying to figure out the way to make that transition. And what are some of those things then from sports science that you are looking to bring in?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think a lot of it has to do with taking a step back and defining your goals and what you're wanting to achieve. Because that's kind of what I did with ADCC, and I felt that made a huge difference. Just stepping back and going what do I want to do? I want to win ADCC. What does it take? What does someone who wins ADCC do? What's their skill set? So work on that, okay, so I wrote wrestling, leg locks, or at least for me, you can make it very specific to yourself, for me, what would it take to take the 2017 Lachlan Giles and then get him to 2019 and try to win ADCC? What changes are required? And let's just put all our effort on that. Don't waste your time doing other things. So, that's kind of how that's how I approached it, and that made a big difference. So I think there's that. There's a lot of things in I think for my own training, I feel like I apply a lot of the things pretty well. I think what I find is hard is, as a coach, to teach to a group a sport that is often best practiced on an individual level. As in, I feel like self-directed learning and what techniques you should be working on, and whether you need to be doing more rolling or drilling and so on, is very dependent on the person. And then everyone comes together in one class. How do you make each individual person get the most out of the class when they're all requiring different things at that time? That's actually probably my biggest question at the moment, is how to maximize the use of class time for students. So I mean, I kind of wrote out it I think it's easier that one of the best things you could do is divide it by experience, because then that kind of takes care of how much time should you spend drilling, specific training and rolling. Because I think the more experience you get, the more time doing those latter things, and the earlier on, the more time spent drilling. And it's kind of easier to, for the early on, a very, you can do a fundamentals class and teach, the kind of foundational positions, and they're going to be, that everyone's going to get something out of that by going to those classes. Whereas for the advanced people, they need probably their specific game, so separating classes based on experience I think is a big thing. And then I'm trying to implement some of the, learning principles like spaced repetition. So, I kind of wrote out a syllabus, and whatever we cover, we'll teach it in detail. And then we just kind of refresh it again, just for like a week. Maybe we might spend a week on it, and then we'll do like a revision week 8 weeks later, which covers everything we did in the last 8 weeks, just in 1 week, just to kind of bring that back in the brain. So things like that I'm trying to implement. I wouldn't say I've got it perfect yet, but it's something I'm working on. I don't know what else I've got.
Yeah. No, that's all right. Spaced repetition I know is a big thing in sports science, so it's good to, that you're, trying to implement that into jiu-jitsu. And I like the way you've just said then of condensing those, the 8 weeks but down into the 1 week as a refresher. That's a good, rough way for people to go on. And as for what else you can do, I remember you were doing a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu learning study in your own gym based on, I think it was rates of completion or successful trials of technique. So you were able to talk about that, how that went, or what you...
Yeah, I'll get into that. So that was, I didn't get enough data, enough useful data out of that. So I think I've got a better way to measure it now, which I'll try to look at next time. But so people had to, this is how I wanted to make a study to see whether working one thing, like focusing on one topic, for a few lessons in a row, and then changing to another topic for a few lessons in a row, and then changing to another topic, whether that would be a better way to learn than a more random, so you do one day, another one the next day, another one. It actually was within the session. So within the one session, you're working the 3 different techniques and kind of, or positions. And we took data at the start. So like the group was out in the middle, and you line up, and whoever you go against, you either win or you lose. So you start from your position and you win or you lose. Okay. And then you'd come back and you'd write that on a spreadsheet, like win or loss.
Or learn.
I'll learn. Yeah. Well, yeah. And then we got that data from like the start to the, from the first week to the last week of it. Did people learn better from, kind of working everything at once, or like blocked? It's kind of like, it's somewhat of a blocked versus random training study, to a certain degree. But we didn't get enough. The one thing I found was tough was with the random, with a structure like that, with the random training, was you might have 3 positions you're working, but maybe even in a 15-minute period, you might only get 6 goes overall. So you're only getting like 2 attempts at the thing that you do, which it's hard. I personally feel like I feel like something for learning is you want to understand what is going wrong and give yourself a chance to try to correct it. I feel like that's a process. I don't know if this has been shown in sports science, but I feel like that's a process you kind of want to go through. It's like if you shoot a basketball, you want to know that it did or didn't go in the hoop, and then you make your adjustment based on that and shoot it again. Oh, okay, that was better. So now you kind of get some reinforcement for that behavior. Maybe you don't have to do that 100 times, but you at least want to be able to do that, I think. And then getting just 2 attempts at your technique you're trying in the whole session of each one might not be enough to actually elicit a strong improvement. But that's because I think the research would support a random style of training, like mixing things up. But I think sometimes when it's so complex and you're getting so few things, I just don't know how well that applies to jiu-jitsu. I think it makes sense for like shooting. If you can get someone to shoot a basketball 50 times in a row, then mixing it up and making them have to focus on like different aspects of it probably helps more. I don't know in jiu-jitsu. That's what I wanted to find out. But
yeah. So
I actually think, but one of the issues was that the error in like the measurements from like who you were rolling with, like had too big of a factor on the outcome. So there's like a variability, if you come out from the front of the line and now you've got a black belt, you could have improved massively at your technique, but you're going to lose. So and so there ends up with being a lot of variability, and it's you'd need like huge amount of data. I would have needed. I think we had like 50 people that did the study, but we would have needed. I think like 300 we would have needed to actually get to look for some sort of effect that I was after. So, what I was thinking instead was to maybe measure, to take a more specific thing and measure, such as like guard retention or something, and measure the time that you if you get people to write down the time that they were playing guard or how many times they got. If you did like a 10-minute period, you got 10 minutes, you're on your back. If you get past, then it doesn't matter. The person goes to the end of the line, but measure the amount of times you got past in a 10-minute period or something. That might be a little bit better, but I'll look into that again further. But yeah, I want to get into some more research side of things. But I've been obviously after ADCC, I've been traveling and doing a lot of seminars and so on. So
living the life.
Yeah. Well, not anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no one is, but it's been good. So yeah, I think there are those, I guess, unique challenges in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or grappling that, maybe those other sports don't have. But is there anything, spaced repetition we talked about, any other elements that you are, that you've heard about that you might want to look into, or give some pointers to people to maybe start their own research on?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things, it's in my opinion, one of the biggest things in grappling is that you need to identify what the problem is, and to be able to, I think, imagine, I'm going to use a basketball analogy again, but this is how I see it. Imagine you shoot a basketball, but like you're blind, maybe you're blindfolded, or you can see the ring, you shoot, but then like as you shoot, they cover your eyes and you don't even know, like someone might tell you that they say it missed, okay? That you missed the basketball shot, but they don't tell you whether it was too shallow, too deep, too much to the left or to the right. It would be so hard to improve your basketball shot without knowing what you needed, essentially knowing what you need to do to get better. Like, okay, I need to shoot it with a bit more force or less force or a little to the left, to the right. Once you know that, you can like be more accurate with your shots. But I think in grappling, something as complex as grappling, most of the time you go for a move, it doesn't work, and you don't know what you could have done to actually fix it. So I think that's it's an essential part of grappling that is different to a lot of the sports that get researched. It's just about any other sport I can think of. It would be pretty easy to tell them, in a case of an error, like what they needed to do to fix it. And in jiu-jitsu, it's actually really difficult. So, yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. So just being able to increase that level of feedback and between rolling partners, and let's say if someone tells you it was a crank, not a choke, then stop them and find out why. Is that about right? Yeah. So that's not so much like maybe not based on sports science, but it's just my feelings towards what I think is a huge factor in improving. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think a lot of the stuff then we've talked about, look, maybe it's, geared towards the maximum, maximizing the time spent training for competition and effectiveness. How do you then, balance that out for just the hobbyist people coming into your gym, keeping it fun? Would they have been keen to fill out surveys on how their success rates and whatnot, or just, How do you walk that divide between the competition team and just your people wanting to get fit and have a bit of fun?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, people were quite interested in the study, so we had pretty good kind of a good amount of people joined up for that study. We did. I mean, something else which kind of failed was I tried to get everyone to fill out their like a spreadsheet just with their goals and like, okay, what are you aiming for? This is actually for our pro team, but like, what are your goals and what are you what's your goals? What do you need to improve to get there? And that wasn't followed, as I don't know, people tended to be less active in that. So, which is funny, but I mean, I think some people are doing that themselves, at least in their own head. But a lot of people aren't. And I think just going through the process is a very beneficial thing to do, to just to write it down and go, okay, this is where I want to go. This is what I got to do. And that means that on your day when you come into the gym tired, you've committed to working on the skill set you need. Because, for example, I think wrestling's the perfect example for this, because we've got so many people that say they want to do ADCC, and then they come in and they're tired and sore. What's the one thing they won't work? Wrestling, because it's hard. And I'm I'll be the same unless when I've got ADCC coming up, I can be like, okay, it's coming up, I need to do this, and I'll kind of force myself to do it. But I'd definitely rather just kind of, pull guard and do the more lazy approach. But that's not what you need. That's not what I need to achieve my goal. So having it written down and going like, okay, well, today I'm doing my single leg takedown defense, then that's what I'm going to do. I think it makes a big difference.
Okay. That's, just definitely power of writing down your goals for sure. I wonder, did you write down your ADCC goal? Was that written down in a notebook somewhere that you go back and look at?
I probably wouldn't have a physical. I mean, it was, yeah. Did I write? Maybe. I'm trying to think. Like, yeah, I didn't. I mean, it would have been. I think I wrote down we were writing down like like a kind of weekly plan, and trying to forecast that. It can be hard to can be hard to say like, for the next 8 weeks I'm going to work this position or whatever, or next 4 weeks, because sometimes you feel like you didn't get enough of it, like you need to do more of it by the end of that time, or you might feel like after 2 weeks of doing it that you're actually feeling quite comfortable and there's something else that's got more importance. So, but at least, I mean, I think it's better to write it down and then change it if need be than not do anything at all.
Then for your competition side, you had that consistency and that ability to stay in that competitive space for a long time until you got success. What would your advice be for the novice who just, wants to just, pick up a sport and stay in the sport for a long time? Let's say they get their blue belt and maybe they're thinking about, I've done enough for some reason and they don't want to come back.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to someone like that to help keep them actually in the sport?
I mean, I think that they have to work out what they're doing it for. I think if their goal was to get a blue belt and quit, then I don't know if there's anything I could say that would change that.
Yeah. Goal achieved. Done.
Yeah, I mean, I think if your goal is to have something to keep you fit and keep your mind engaged and something I think the main thing should be you enjoy it. I think if you don't enjoy it, if you're going there, you don't enjoy it, but you want to get your blue belt, then I mean, don't even bother getting your. I suppose still probably good to get. If you don't enjoy it, I still think it's a useful thing to practice for the self-defense point of view, I suppose, for a certain point in time, maybe to a blue belt. But yeah, then quit. But if you, find a way to enjoy it, find good training partners that you enjoy rolling with or maybe who make you think and do that. And then, so that should roll at a pace where you're not going to get injured.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in terms of, different training partners who will make you think and, probably change your game, going back to the competition, when you're, competing in open weight and you're going against all these different, competitive styles, especially from people in your own weight division to the giants in open weight. How were your setups changing and, your attacks changing? Did you just have the same game, or did you say, okay, once they get past X kilograms, I'm switching things up?
I had two main areas I was trying to set my leg locks up from, and one was that De La Riva and K-guard, and the other was from reverse De La Riva, which is a bit of a closer range. And in my weight division, for whatever reason, I think just stylistically, I thought it would be better against my opponent, which was Lucas Lepri. I thought the reverse De La Riva thing might catch him off guard. I just had like a different entry that I thought he might not have seen, but that was my undoing. But in the open weight, I feel like I want to keep a bit more distance. So De La Riva, something that just keeps both feet in front of my opponent at most of the time is what I wanted to work with. So just a slight more distance-based guard, and that seemed to work well. So, but it wasn't. I was already practicing that style the whole training camp. Anyway,
yep.
I wasn't particularly trying to get ready for big people. That just happened. But it was probably good that my style was strongly influenced by the Meow brothers, who are quite small. So I figured whatever they're doing probably works. Most of the people they roll are probably bigger than them. So whatever they're doing works, scales up.
Yeah. That's fair enough. You want to get that skill set that will go across weights. And with the big guys, probably the biggest in one way or another would be Gordon Ryan.
Yeah.
What's happening with him at the moment? I mean, at the moment, obviously nothing.
No, he's good.
But there was that talk of the match, and he was putting that stuff out there. What's happening with that? Do you think that'll ever come to fruition?
I don't think he ever really wanted to do that match, at least not for that price. He put an offer of $500,000 on a leg lock battle, compared to my $5,000, which of course I was happy to do. But then I said yes, and then he started putting all these stipulations in about I have to fight X and Y with 3 other people within a year or something, and which wouldn't have happened with Corona probably anyway. So there you go. I wouldn't have got my 5,000 even if I won. So 500,000. I think he was just Gordon. He'll say anything.
Yeah, just a bit of bluster.
He's certainly since everyone's been locked inside, he's certainly unleashed. I think he's furious.
Bit of cabin fever.
Yeah.
So when things finally we get back out on the mats, we get going. What do you think will be the next evolution in no-gi grappling that people should be maybe looking forward to and thinking ahead? Where do you think the game's going to go?
I think that very much depends on the rule set. I think in ADCC, the wrestling's going to be wrestling's going to be a huge determining factor in a lot of matches. So I think that's if you're preparing for ADCC and you're not wrestling, then I don't know what you're doing. but so I think that's going to be a huge factor. Everything else will be there. People are going to. I think the sport's evolving, so we'll get sharper with our leg locks, sharper with our passing guard, front headlock. It's hard to say what, if I knew where the evolution was going to occur, like what's a new tactic or something, then I would be doing that already. So I just don't, I see some patterns, I see certain people kind of favoring some positions now. But actually, we were talking about Gordon. I know Gordon's like playing a very seated guard, kind of almost trying to wrestle up from a seated guard. Which works for him. I personally, I can see that being valuable. My that used to be more my style. I used to play a lot more forward pressure. It's a much more risky style. Your chance of being front headlock, kimura'd, or underhooked. It's higher risk, higher reward. I personally see what the Meows are doing and the K-guard as being the other reaction, which is to play more off your back and try to get into leg entanglements. I think that's the avenue that my direction is going, and I see more and more of that in no-gi, because it's hard to play standard De La Riva and those gi-based guards, but the K guards still kind of lets you work in those positions. So that's my guard evolution is working to there. I mean, I think for passing, I don't know if body lock is, but that's not exactly new, but body lock is certainly common no-gi. Back takes, everyone's getting better at back takes. I think, they're realizing that to score points, you need to, even for if you've got wrestling, you also need to be able to take the back, because your opponent's probably going to turtle and try to escape. You talked to Preet. I do think like a better defensive back game will surface to a degree. It's a hard one for me, because I have success, but sometimes you go against someone like a Craig or something, and I really don't feel like turning my back at all is a good idea.
Yeah.
Like some of those people who are very, very good at taking the back, I just feel like turning your back and trying to fight off the back can be a landmine.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving them what they want, then
exactly.
They really,
so
they want you to stay pinned.
Yeah, at the moment, my thoughts are only when when it's a choice between me losing points and turning my back and risking, I'll turn my back. But otherwise, I'm not going to try to fight a defensive back battle proactively. Yeah. So but in terms of what the next evolution is, wrestling. Yeah, yes. Potentially some better ways of setting up submissions from standing. That's not something I'm particularly looking into, but that could be someone who's
so just chaining that wrestling into submissions.
Yeah, I think now that you've got people you've got a rule set like ADCC where people are going to be willing to engage the stand-up battle, you then might see some opportunities to set up submissions from the standing position, which you wouldn't have seen in IBJJF because people just pull guard. So now there's more opportunity for something like that.
I like it. That's going to give me something to go think about, and where can we more standing submissions? Yeah. And that's going to be that's going to be a good little way to end that. I think just a little bit of advice for people to go off and research themselves. So I really appreciate the time you've given me today, Lachlan.
No worries, thank you. That's some really good questions.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that feedback. We're talking about the importance of feedback.
Yeah, so that's right.
Thank you very much. And of course, you also did mention that the body lock could be a big thing, and you've got the body lock instructional if people want to get it.
Just
what are the other
subtle
ones
plug?
Yeah, that's it. What are the other ones that people can get, and how should they get in contact with you if they want to? Yeah,
so through BJJ Fanatics, I have instructionals on half guard, a front headlock series. I've got one on half guard passing. I've got the body lock pass, and I've got the leg lock anthology as well. So there's those 5, and then on Grappler's Guide, I've got something on butterfly guard and on kind of the equivalent to guard retention, but on top, which is sweep prevention. So kind of how to, when you get stuck in all different types of guards, how do you actually kind of maintain your base and get back to a neutral position without getting swept or submitted. So that's something that was a topic I thought hadn't really been covered. So if you go onto BJJ Fanatics, if you use my code Lachlan10, that saves 10%. And if you go to Grappler's Guide, that's got a whole bunch of, not just me, there's a whole bunch of other experts they kind of have on different topics. And that one, if you use the code Lachlan, that saves you 30%. So
nice, beautiful. I'll put that in the links and show notes, and people can follow through there. And I think that'll be all for now. You got to go class. You got a Zoom class, or
Zoom class coming up. So yeah.
Okay, I'll let you go get prepped and everything for that.
No worries.
But thanks so much for the time again, and you have a great evening.
You too. Cheers. See ya.
Thanks, Lachlan.
You have been listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Until next time, you can visit sonnybrown.net to find out more ways to break it down.